Welcome to Off Panel. Yo everybody, welcome to Off Panel. I'm your host, David Harper, and this episode closes the show's coverage of the story behind Image Comics. As you may have seen, I wrote a piece for The Ringer on Image's 25th anniversary, and to get the story, I talked with some of the 7 founders of the company. So to show my work and highlight the stories behind Image, I'm going to run those interviews in full, even if they aren't going to be typical off-panel interviews. And the final interview is with Todd McFarlane, who at the time was the artist of some of the most popular Spider-Man comics ever, before becoming a founder and current partner of Image, as well as the creator of Spawn. Let's dive into it, shall we? So I'm going to start at the beginning of Image. You know, from everything I've heard, you were always one of the drivers of not just, leaving Marvel and starting Image, but, doing so in the way you guys all did. I'm curious, what made that move an appealing one to you?
For me, well, there's a couple of things that was driving it. One was, I was just starting to get a little, unrest, if you will, with Marvel. Just, given that I was doing Spider-Man, that was the big book, and we were having these silly sort of mini confrontations about the book, and it was just odd conversations I was having. Going, your company is to put out monthly books and sell as many as you can. I do that. At least if you just use raw numbers as the indicator, I'm doing that better than anybody else you employ. Mm-hmm. So why are we having this conversation, right? Like I don't usually bring my top employees in here and start having odd conversations. I start from the bottom and work up. Mm-hmm. So, I was getting a little bit tired, and combined that, my wife and I were pregnant with was going to be our first child. Mm-hmm. So there was a big unknown, right? I'm never been a dad. I don't know what that means. So I was looking to take a break, anyways, and just go, let me just take a breather. Let me see what's going on. And then, given that there's that combo, then in between that, I would have conversations off and on with Rob Liefeld. And Rob was, sort of voicing some of the same stuff. Maybe I'll just go out and do my own thing and take a break or do whatever. And I was like, okay. And then, we talked to Eric, or Eric talked to me, or talked to Rob, and then Eric sort of said, yeah, I got my thing, the dragon I want to do. And what was happening was there were sort of 3 of us that kind of sort of had the same general idea, but we were all going down our own separate tracks, individually and emotionally. Mm-hmm. And then it sort of became a little clear that that I don't know who said it first, that we just go, why are we talking about 3 different things that we're just going to do on our own, which is all cool, and we're all going to sort of, look over each other's shoulders. Why don't we just do it together, right? Given that from my perspective, and it may have even come from my suggestion, was that I had sort of been doing a lot of reading on the history of comics. And the one thing that became abundantly clear to me, even as I walked in the door for my first comic job out of school, was that comic artists, creative comic people had been coming and going one at a time for decades. And it was sort of easy to deal with from a corporate level. It was easy to deal with one in, one out, one in, one out, one in, one out. Mm-hmm. So if you look at it as like a sports franchise, then you go, okay, the Yankees may be able to sort of, live to tell about Derek Jeter not being there. But what if Derek Jeter and Roger Clemens and Mariano Rivera and whoever the top 4 or 5 guys, and they all decided they were going to retire the same year.
Yeah.
Right? That's an impact. That's an impact that has to now be taken seriously. And for me, what I always had in the back of my mind was reading in the Comics Journal, which is a lot where I read a lot of the stories, was Jack Kirby sort of recanting some of his career. And I remember with vivid clarity, I even remember where I was reading the book. I was on a dock someplace. And I remember having this epiphany saying, man, if they can do that to Jack Kirby, the king, they can do it to anybody.
Yeah.
And so I was probably 18, 19 at that time. You know, I'm a few years from even getting my first professional job. So I always went into the industry with my eyes wide open. So I didn't resent it. I didn't begrudge it. I just went, Todd, you now know what can happen. Make sure that you're protecting yourself along the way, right? So they're going to use you. You try and use them as much as possible so that everybody gets something out of it, so that if the time comes where either side has to part ways, you're not left in the lurch. Because I saw it. I saw it with some people I already knew that were, you know, had worked for years and years and years at the companies, and then they just decided, their style isn't hip enough. Right. And now these are 60-year-old men that were great. They're great people. Kurt Swan did Superman forever. And I understand it's not, but it's like one day Kurt Swan wakes up and nobody wants to give him money to draw his stuff anymore. So what's Kurt do? I don't know. Kurt probably didn't plan for that phone call. Right. Right? We're 19. I went, Todd, when you go into any career, you should be aware that phone call can come, because it comes for everybody eventually. Comes sooner than later for some of us, but it comes eventually. They just go, no thanks, done, you're out. So what's the backup plan? What's the backup plan at that point? So it was really one of the things that drove me personally, that I didn't really sort of pull anything out of my portfolio and ever give it to Marvel or DC when I was working for them, because I go, no, I'll be a good employee. You ask me personally to create new characters, I'll do it. If that's what's in the plot, I'll do it. What I won't do is go out of my way and give you stuff that I've created and just hand it over to you. Right. And I'll put that in reserve. So, and not that any of it had any sort of big meaning, but at the moment then that we decided, now sort of jumping back to sort of the formation of Image, that Rob and Eric and I go, yeah, that's right, we should team up. That I knew what character I was going to do, which was this character called Spawn that I had created in high school, that had been sitting in my portfolio, that I had he'd just been there. I mean, with dozens of other characters, but he was sort of the guy I liked the most and I'd done the most pages of, and he was just sitting there. So I even knew who I was going to be doing, just like Eric knew he was going to be doing the Dragon, and Rob was going to, do a new band of superheroes. I knew who I was going to pull out of my portfolio. So the moment becomes, then we go, good. We've got our team, Rob and Eric and myself. But again, I also knew that there's a strength in numbers. At the same time, I had been talking to dozens of artists about potentially trying to start an artistic union, and it was close and impossible task. It is an interesting experiment that I tried, where the people that were the most afraid were those that had nothing to lose. And you would think there would have been the opposite, right? Like, why me? I got the top selling book. They're paying me good money. I'm raking it in. I got the fame and fortune. Like, why would I throw that away? You would think that guys like me would be the ones that would be like, no, I'm not going to disrupt that. Right. But I found that the fear came from those that had nothing, and their excuse was, well, if I join you and it doesn't work, again, the whole it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, then what if they blackball me? And it was always sort of an interesting conversation, because I go, we'll do. Here's what I will promise you. Right now, they're not giving you any steady work. They're not really giving you a steady paycheck. You don't have a fucking girlfriend. You don't have a car. You don't have a house. You don't got any money in the bank. If you join us, I will replicate that at worst, right? What are you talking about? You got nothing. So what do you mean? They can't take anything from you because you've got nothing for them to take.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you afraid they're going to take nothing? They're going to blackball you. They probably don't even know you exist. It became exhausting. It became exhausting trying to encourage people to basically get out of, the cycle that they had in the boxes that they had put all this creative people. Hollywood does that too with actors and writers and directors. They only can do these kinds of movies and they're only these kinds of characters. So, we were there and I go, okay, so now we had the three. We go, we got to expand it. Well, Rob goes, hey, I got a buddy, Jim Valentino. Cool. Okay. Now we're up to 4. That's cool. And we were ready to make the move with 4.
Mm-hmm.
Valentino, Larson, Liefeld, McFarlane. Okay, we're ready to go. So we now plan the day. We're going to fly to New York. We're going to then go and take a meeting, and we're going to basically tell Marvel and then later on DC that we're basically going out on our own.
Mm-hmm.
Not again, there's been distortions about what went down on that day. There were no demands. There was no negotiations. It was just us saying, oh, by the way, here's what's going to happen. Just thought you would like to know,
mm-hmm.
right? Just as an employee, more so it's you may want to do something about some of the reasons we're leaving because you may get another group of people next week if you just keep doing what you're doing. Who knows? Everybody has their breaking point at different times. So there's the 4 of us. We're gonna go. I don't even know if we had the name Image at that point. Maybe we had. I think that came from Rob, and we're staying in New York, and it happens to be when there's something going on with a big auction in New York,
mm-hmm.
and I run into Jim Lee, and I go, hey Jim, I know Jim, and he was sort of the golden boy of Marvel at that time. He goes, hey, what are you doing? And so, I gave him the sales pitch. I go, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're in town, Rob and I. And, oh, by the way, we would love to have you, dude.
Mm-hmm.
We would love to have you. And he thinks about it for a bit and very quickly joins in later that night, goes, I'm in. I like what you said. Oh, by the way, I've also got this guy named Wills. It's a buddy of mine. He'll come too.
Mm-hmm.
So now 4 becomes 6. And he goes, hey, you mind if I go to the meeting tomorrow with you guys? And I'm like, no, this would be awesome because I thought Jim Lee was really the moment because especially for Marvel, because at this point, Rob and Todd were like the renegades.
Mm-hmm.
Of course the rebels are going to go into rebellion. Of course, it's who they are. Jim Lee was the golden boy. He was the guy that followed and abided and was like the perfect employee.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, he was the one that was going to send the loudest message of like, look, you're going to lose us, and Rob and I, you're losing us. We're skilled, so you're just losing skill. You might not like us personally, but that's a whole nother argument. But Jim, you thought he was content,
mm-hmm.
and you thought he was happy, and you thought you'd never have to, and even he's going. So to me, he was a big deal. That the night before we go into the meeting, by coincidence, and there's where serendipity and dumb luck comes to has to be part of every equation. Mark Silvestri is staying in the same hotel as us, and I happened to bump into him in the hotel. And again, it was like, Mark, you got 10 minutes? Yeah, sure. And I gave him a hard sales pitch, and I go, but here's the problem, dude. It's 11 o'clock tonight. We got this meeting tomorrow at 9 in the morning. I need an answer by the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, go, it's a lot of stuff. But in the morning, about 7 o'clock, he phones and he goes, I'm in. Mm-hmm. And I go, wow, okay. So at this point, I go, we've got 7 strong, and statistically, the 7 of us accounted for 44 of the top 50 selling books in the previous year. Because this was at the end of 90. This was December of 91, so for 1991, we owned, between Rob and Jim and Mark and I and Eric had a couple that we had 44 of the top 50 out of about 6,000 books that were released that year, right? So essentially the equivalent at that point was the Olympics were doing, their dream team basketball, where they were letting pros play. We were essentially the dream team. Mm-hmm. And so the dream team was about to walk out of the office. And of course it was going to have an impact. It did. The stock of Marvel was like sunk hard and fast, when news broke, on a Tuesday, I think it was. That the news people caught it. But we go to the meeting and there's Tom DeFalco and Terry Stewart, who was sort of the big guy. Tom DeFalco was editor-in-chief. We basically lay it out. It's Rob, myself, Jim Lee, my wife, and my newborn. She's only a couple months old at this point. And so I've always said, I go, look, if you ever get conflicting messages to any of this, I go, throw all of us out and don't believe any of us except for my wife. Because my wife, she wouldn't fucking bend the truth, even if it meant saving my life practically. Mm-hmm. So she's the one, because I've heard some things that Tom has said, and more so what Terry Stewart had to go to his, board and say that we demanded stuff. We didn't do any of that. What are you talking about? We just said we're leaving, and here's a couple of reasons why. Boom, 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 boom. And they were basic stuff. It was, and what we were trying to tell them is that we think it's easy for you to basically close this barn door. Right. It's easy. If you make a fucking T-shirt of one of my images, just give me a T-shirt, no big deal. And by the way, the piece that sort of rubbed all of us sort of a little bit sort of wrong was you kept, and it's funny because it's now become true what we would always envision, is that they used to have these summits of like how to move the books forward and what you were going to do and plan out all the books and plan out all the books and all the books and all the books. And they would do that and they wouldn't call any of the creative people in with it.
Right.
And it was bizarre. So I go, between Jim Lee, who's doing X-Men, the new X-Men book, and me doing Spider-Man. I'm like, fuck, we're rocking your guys' universe right now. And you guys are now going to go plan the X-Men and plan Spider-Man. And you don't want any input from us, who basically took these books and sent them into the stratosphere with sales? Mm-hmm. Doesn't strike you as odd that some of the designers might have some input? And here's the thing, here's the easy part, gentlemen. You could have just done it to humor us and just let us come in, give it our half an hour, this would be cool, and this would be cool, and this would be cool, and you go all nod your head, and the moment we walked out the door, fucking roll your eyes and go, we're not doing any of that shit. And it wouldn't have mattered. You just at least gave us the half an hour to say that we, the collective community of creative people, should have some input into creating. I don't know. Seems like a no-brainer to me, but obviously you didn't figure it. Rob Liefeld leaves halfway through the meeting, which was so Rob Liefeld-ish. So it was like, oh, okay, you guys just finished, but I got something to do. Okay, because this one isn't important enough. So I think he had to go meet his girlfriend. So which just. I go, it's perfect. It was perfect. I go, Rob, because his enthusiasm could only last so long. Okay, go. We'll take care of this. And then I'll never forget is my wife and Jim Lee and I get in the elevator and Tom DeFalco walks us to the elevator. And essentially, as the doors are closing, it's almost like a movie that, he essentially says, hey, if it doesn't work, you're welcome back. Mm-hmm. Right? And bam, the doors close, and Jim gave me the same look I gave him. Jim Lee is a college graduate. He was going to go to med school, right? I'm a college grad, and by the way, my dad was in the printing business for 45 years. Here's what comic books are. It's fucking ink on paper. Mm-hmm. That's it. End of the conversation. So in terms of production, we're not building nuclear plants. We're not trying to send some probe into Mars. We are building ink on paper. Like, what are you talking about? This isn't rocket science. So we looked at each other going, wow, he just thinks we're dumbasses, right? I mean, it was like, so it was a bit of an insult just before it was closing going. And so just, if nothing else, we go, we have to make this work now, because if we can't make ink on paper work, like, oh my God, what good are we for?
Mm-hmm.
So that was it. And then from there just rolled out. We picked up Malibu, to help us at the beginning to do some production / distribution stuff. But that only lasted about a year. And then, but that meeting was December of 1991. We have our first official kickoff meeting, which has a picture that is sort of run the rounds of us at Mark's Malibu house there, where we sort of all talked about what character we're going to pull out. But that same day, we got in the elevator and left Marvel. The next move was we walked across the street, and went to DC, because again, that was it. That was sort of the options. You quit Marvel, you go to DC. You quit DC, you go to Marvel. That was sort of the ping pong that was going on. I mean, there were some other minor players at that point, but that was sort of your option. So we then walk over to DC. I'd worked at DC. Rob hadn't, but I had Jim Lee in tow. And Jim Lee had never, ever been in the DC office, ever. Mm-hmm. So we walk in and we just say, we meet the first person we meet, we have a meeting with, and we say, hey, by the way, I got Jim Lee here. Just want to let you know we quit Marvel. Bam! They go, hang on a sec. They make a phone call. We've got a meeting now in the big foyer, or in the big conference room, and there must be 14 people with a bunch of the editors there and all the head people, and they're like, oh my God, we just hit the mother load. Mm-hmm. We hit the mother, like, are you kidding me? Jim Lee, the Golden Boy, and Todd's coming, and Silvestri and Rob. Oh my God, when we gave them the list of the people who had left with us, not physically, but at least in the conversation, mm-hmm. They were like, woohoo! They were already counting the chickens. And then we get into the meeting, and as you're like going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, then we go, yeah, but by the way, just one more piece of information. We're here to tell you the same thing. We're not here to work for you either. Mm-hmm. And you could sort of see the collapse of going, you school. So I want to get this straight. You're bringing yourself and Jim Lee into our offices, and Jim never been here, to tell us that he will never be here again, right? And it was like, yeah, essentially, that was sort of the gist of it. Now, again, fast forward, obviously Jim ends up going back there, but at that moment, nobody had any idea any of that.
Right.
So we were there, but again, there was this moment, and again, there's some crystal clear moments in my life, and at the DC, the crystal clear moment for me was when they go, well, we don't get it. I mean, they were all confused, and they go, we don't get it. So we'll give you and make your life better. Whatever Marvel's not doing, we'll make it better. We'll make it better. We'll make it better. And my question to them was, I understand that, because you've got the creative community, and you want to make sure you do the best for the creative community, because you guys are good people. So let me just ask you a question. You know that piece of paper you guys just came out with that you're going to publish, which is like how to help improve the creative community at DC Comic Books. And I don't know if they had just released it or they were just going to release it, and they were so proud of it. And I go, so I just want to ask you a question, because I know how much you want to help us, right? And I'm thankful for it. When you put that contract together to make our lives better, us creative people better, let me ask you one simple question. Did you ask one fucking creative person their input? And when when I got I got my answer. I always told people, your answer is in any pregnant pause. If you ever get a pregnant pause to any tough question, that's your answer. Mm-hmm. So the pregnant pause came, and it was like, thank you, right? So right. Thank you for writing a document to make our lives better without asking any of us what would make it better. Mm-hmm. And this is the reason why we're here telling you we're tired of it. We're going to go and see if we can come up with another formula, another way of doing something that doesn't do that to us. And so we got up, we left, and essentially that was that was sort of day one when we walked out of DC. That was then day one of Image being official. Official. We just go. Is that we've all take the plunge. We're going and we're off to the races. So there's the origin of it.
Would you say that the biggest appeal to you was, like, for going and creating your own thing, was ownership in general, not just in the sense that you're going to own the rights to your own work, but also the fact that you kind of control your own destiny. You can't be put into a position like you were saying Kurt Swan was in, where he can't find work. He just, one day he wakes up and he just doesn't have work. You would never be in that position because you're controlling everything for yourself. Was that the biggest appeal?
Yeah. I think we were, all of us arguably, but you can get more information from the other guys. So I think all of us were fairly naive, right? And so I think really the biggest thing that was driving us wasn't sort of the ownership stake of it, although we knew intellectually that was part of it, right? Because again, I remember hearing Terry Stewart saying we came in and demanded, part ownership of Spider-Man and some silly stuff. And I go, what are you talking about? We don't own those characters. We're smart in it. Like, what do you, but we were going to be the bad guy. I think more than anything else for us is that we just wanted to create what we wanted to create, unfettered. I think for most of us that was at least 51% of it, if not 91%. Of just going, I want to do this type of story with these kinds of characters, with this kind of tonality and this kind of mood to it. And each of us had a different definition of what all those meant. And if we can just do that, and it means that we make less money, it's okay. We're willing to basically trade cash for creative freedom, right? Not creative ownership, although we knew intellectually that was there. But it was creative freedom. At least it was for me. I'm just going, wow, cool. I now don't have to have these silly conversations that were starting to wear me out with the editorial that were like, you can't do this and you can't do that. And it's like, why? And it was like, wow, the book's kind of popular now. This is the kind of conversation I was having at Marvel. The book's kind of popular now, and you can't do that. There's too many people looking at it. And it was like, when nobody was looking at it, this was all the stuff I was doing to help build the sales up. But now all of a sudden there's a magical number, and now we were conducting, because I remember when they gave me Spider-Man, they said, hey, you and Dave Michelini, Spider-Man's not even in the top 20. Can you get it up? And it was like, and they fucking shut the door. They walked out. And so we just did our thing, and then we get it up, and then all of a sudden they come back and they go, oh, now they're super popular. We need to be the conductor of this train now. Sorry, Todd, you're going to have to move off to the side. It was sort of a weird one that I'm going, okay, so I can't do these things now because I'm too popular. So if I lose sales, I can start doing it, or like, it didn't make any sense to me. It was odd conversations of marketing. They weren't marketing my book or Jim's book because we were too popular. They were marketing the lesser Spider-Man books and X-Men books, and which I always thought was odd because it's like, well, where's the fine line between people? You need to market it because people don't know it exists, and you can need to market it. And the reason it's not selling, not because they don't know it exists, they just don't like it. It's not. They like our product better. I don't know. It's a weird one, right? Most other companies, encourage more sales of their number ones and number two stuff that they have in their stores or their lots or whatever. It's weird, but okay. So like I said, and that was all the straws that eventually broke the camel's back for me. So for me, then I go, I get to now do a character and write it the way that I want. And if I want to do something that's a little dark, and throw in the odd curse word or whatever else, I'm not tied to the comics code or anything like that. And that was all of it. And mathematically, given that financially we were getting 7% of the pie when we were working at Marvel, then do the math. That means we could sell then, close to 1/20th of what we were selling. And if we got the whole pie, it would equal the same amount of income that we were getting. Right. So, when people go, it was a big risk. Not really. When you go, hey, I know I'm not working for Apple, but I'm going to go make my own phone. And if I sell, 1/50th of what I was doing before, we get the same money. Okay, fine. But lo and behold, what ended up happening was we sold basically the same, if not more, than we were selling
Right.
On that pie that we were only getting 7%, and now we're getting 100% of this giant pie when we were all been content with 100% of our little tiny tart, if you will. And we go, wow! And so it catapulted us very quickly to be able to go, let's keep it going. Let's keep this thing going. Let's do more and more. And again, you can now argue that our naivety and the pennies raining down from heaven were some of the early undoings of what we did, because you go, oh my gosh, we don't know what we're doing, but we're making money. And oh, by the way, I've got so much money. Why do I need to work? Right. And again, this is sort of the curse of anybody that's young, right? Just don't give them too much success too fast, because we don't know what to do with it. We're not that smart. So, and so again, we now then have to start struggling through our growing pains at that point. So, but for me, the way that I sort of planned out my life, and again now I'm just going into Todd mode, because once we set up Image, and I think for years, and maybe even today, I don't think people quite understand Image. Image owns nothing.
Right.
It owns a couple desks, a logo or something. It owns nothing. Right. So it's a pass through. So each one of us, then the founders of Image, each started our own studios. And so Todd McFarlane, the owner of Spawn, is not obligated to do anything that Image may or may not want, because I can do stuff for my studio. The complication over the years that's always been sort of odd, and I've looked at it completely unique from all of my other partners, is that I didn't think that you could decouple us completely. You couldn't say, well, I have my own studio, and oh, by the way, not only am I a founder of Image, but each one of us had a title, either secretary, president, chairman. We had power within the structure of Image. And so, where through the years I thought that some of my partners, and with some of the sort of behind the doors conversations, were forgetting that they were also an executive, high-ranking executive at Image, that it should come into play with your decisions a little bit with what you're doing with your private studio. Otherwise, you could get into conflict of interest. Right? You could, to me, that was it. It was just a conflict of interest. So when some of the guys started doing work for rival companies, and they've all done it, right? I'm the only lunatic that had just since day one has said no. I'm not doing any more work for Marvel or DC. I'm done. Right? I am not only do I have Spawn in my own little mini empire, but I am the president of Image, and I don't think that it would send a signal of good of going, oh, the president of Image Comics has so much time in his hand that he can actually do a comic book, but he's not willing to give that effort to his own corporation, Image, as the president. It seemed odd to me. To me, I've been obviously the most militant on that position, and part of it was that it was just, if you were almost in any other occupation, you couldn't do it, because it's not only is it to me a conflict of interest and just sort of personal guilt, it's just illegal. Right. It's illegal. You cannot work for Motorola as the president of Motorola and do work on the side for Intel.
Right.
Just, you can't. Right. You can't. But I was the only one that was sort of thinking about it in those terms, and so because I sort of had that bearish sort of mentality, my attitude was early in the game: do one book, try and get it out as often and as fast as you can, and just grind the one book and put a pin pole marker and a mile marker into the ground, and just instead of trying to do 10 things right now, Todd, just do one and just put it into the ground. Do a body of work with a character. Because I knew intellectually a bunch of people were just buying Spawn because they like Todd McFarlane artwork. I get it, right? Who's Spawn? Doesn't mean nothing to anybody. So I knew I was forcing them in a roundabout way to have to read Spawn comics to get Todd McFarlane artwork. So I go, all right, my next task now is I now need to make the book entertaining. And the only way I felt that was going to happen is if I focused on it. And I just went, no, I'm going to have to hunker down on this book, and I'll worry about doing a spin-off. I don't think I did my first sort of expansion of the Spawn mythos till I think I was up to issue 51 or something like that. And I just go, oh, okay, now I can do it. Now I can do a miniseries or something like that, where, Rob and Jim, and a little bit lesser extent, Mark, they were all doing studio work and multiple books, and Eric and Valentino and myself were doing sort of singular books. Wills had dropped out essentially at the first meeting of Image, just saying, I don't want to be a businessman. I just want to do my thing. So there was the six of us. And so three went one way and three went the other way, and everybody sort of had their success or failures differently. So that's sort of where I got to. And now, again, I'm working on issue 269, right? So that's 25 plus years to get there, right? It takes a lot of years to get to that.
Yeah, and you may now actually be the highest numbered comic, which is kind of amazing.
It's not only amazing, it's cool. It's cool and it's stupid on the other guy's part.
Yeah.
Why would you let me, who started a race that started in 1938 with superheroes, why would you let the guy who started the race in 1992 be in the lead? It's ridiculous. So people ask me, Todd, you ever going to do a Spawn, you're going to renumber Spawn number one? Oh, I got a clear answer. Fuck no.
Right.
Fuck no. If I do a number one Spawn next month, I'm going to be one of 12 number one books.
Right.
But if I do 271, I will be the only one at 271. Are you kidding me? You always want to walk into a room saying you're number one of anything. Right. I don't care how you distort the stats. Like, wow. So I don't take it as, oh, well, people aren't going to buy the book because it's a high number, and if you only put a number one on it. I mean, I'm tempted, and I might even do it this year. I'm putting two numbers on my book, 269 in one corner and number one in the other corner. And then the next month, 270 and another fucking number one. And if a number on a book is the only reason you are buying this book, it doesn't seem like it's the proper reason to be dropping your $3. It seems like you should want to buy the book because you like it, you like the character, you like the artwork, you like sort of whatever, some component of it. But it can't be, wow, you know what, I'd collect Spawn if it was a number one or number four, right? Even if it's the same writer and the same penciler and the same inker and the same look and the same tonality, even if all of that's the same, it's a number now. It's a number. Wow. You know what? Maybe I'm getting too old and I'm becoming a dinosaur. I can't get my head wrapped around that logic. Using that logic, you should never, ever, ever watch any sports because you didn't get to see all the fucking Yankee games. Right. Oh my God, I missed the Babe Ruth, so why would I want to watch it now? What are you talking about? You jump on board now, and now they even got these things on TV you can binge watch. If you missed it, you can go back 5 years and you can binge watch it. You don't go, oh, I didn't get in on the beginning, I'm not going to do it. It's bizarro land to me. Oh, and by the way, historically, the data says it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Somebody show me the book in which The book was losing sales. Better than that, the medium as a whole, our industry as a whole was losing sales. Somebody came in and said, let's put number ones on everything, and oh, by the way, that stopped the bleeding. No, it didn't. It was a blip. Mm-hmm. It was a blip. Yes, it worked for a month, 2 months, 4 months, 8 months, and then it regressed, and it went right to where it was before. Okay, I guess if you're a public company and you got to start making your stock look good every 90 days because you've got to do, you got to file your reports with the SEC. Fine, I get it, but I don't get it. Other than I guess I could get a jolt of 30%, 100% sales if I did a spawn number one. Other than I can do it because I can do it. What's the motivation beyond I can do it?
Right.
There's no, I can't get my head wrapped around it. So you guys go and play these short-term little reasons why you're doing everything, and I'm just going to grind it out. Because at some point, I used to buy my books, and I used to admire the books that had big numbers. Because I go, wow, they have weathered the storm.
Right.
These guys have weathered the storm. Through good and bad, I'm not saying every issue is great. I'm just saying that they have weathered the storm. And God bless them for doing it. I admire that. And I'm hoping maybe I got a handful of people that will, at some point acknowledge Spawn as being, I don't read it anymore, but it's been around for 300 issues. He's okay. Oh, no, there's a movie coming out. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, maybe I'll go look at it because at some point I got to see it. So, all right. Fine. I'm good. I'm good with all that.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask about, I talked to Eric and I talked to Jim about, that original meeting you guys had at Mark's place, and they said that it was always part of the intent. It was always part of your guys' plan to offer the same creator-owned deals to other creators down the line. I'm curious, why was that important to you? Why was it important to offer that same creative freedom that you got to other creators down the line?
Just to create an option.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit of selfishness that if we gave a hell of a deal that maybe it wouldn't just be the seven of us having to carry all the workload, mm-hmm. right? That we would be able to get, some good talent. 20 years later, the fruits of that labor are there, obviously. And just going, hey, if you guys fall into the same thing that happened with us, which is, you got Marvel DC, and you're looking for a third option. Let us be a third, or not a third option, but let us be a option, right? Because, there are still other companies, smaller companies around. Let's just be an option. And then you decide whether you like the option. I mean, one of the pieces that sadly, for me, is preventative of sometimes some of the creative people coming to Image is we don't pay a page rate.
Right.
We just go, dude, it's your book. You own it. We don't own anything. Apple doesn't pay for studio time for somebody to cut a record. What they say is we will create a distribution outlet for your creative ventures, and we'll take a little bit of the piece of the pie, right? And unlike Apple, it takes 30%. We were taking a fraction of that. I mean, we could go, no. The lion's share, the vast lion's share should still be to the creative person. We even had it for a while that it was on a sliding scale, and it was a percentage. And today it's a fixed cost. Mm-hmm. It's a fixed cost. Why? It takes the same amount of effort to do a book that sells 5,000 as it does to do a book that sells 50,000. Why should we get more commission, if you will, on a book because the creative people did an outstanding job? Why should we benefit from that? I don't think we should. So it's like I've done some construction stuff, and some of the people that are building it get it based upon the final price of the house. Why? If I want gold staircases, why gold staircases? Why do you now get paid more? The installation and everything is going to be the same. I just chose a higher product price. Why do you benefit? You made no more effort because I decided to do something at 20 times the cost. Mm-hmm. So no, commission has always been an odd thing for me in my life. I think it also creates conflicts. So we go no. So now we have what is arguably, again, the best entertainment deal, period. Not in comic books, period. Mm-hmm. Period. So I'd like to see somebody in the music, TV, acting, Broadway that shows the deal that we have, which is you own it all, lock, stock, and barrel. There's a small fixed fee for us to get it printed and distribute it and do all your accounting, and then send you all the rest of the money, and then we'll help you on your trade paperbacks if you want, blah blah blah. But if you go and do a Hollywood deal or whatever else, a toy deal, or whatever, we don't get nothing.
Right.
So fuck it. God bless you. God bless you at that point. You get to reap the fruits of your own hard labor. Go. And what's happening is that I guess we should have been better salesmen with that, because it's been the same deal for decades now, over 2 decades. And it just seems to be sort of making sense to the creative community in the last 5, 6, 7 years, even though it was the same deal, right?
Right. That
we go, no, you own everything and you get all the money, essentially. And then, they didn't, I guess they just didn't believe it, or we didn't sell it good enough. And then, and the reason I think that it's working better now isn't really because we became better salesmen. It's because the people that took some of the deals started talking to their friends. And their friends then are going, hold a sec. So, hold a sec. You're telling me, Scott Snyder, that as popular as the Batman book is, you go and do your book at Image, it sells a fraction of what Batman is, but you're telling me you make more money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What? Yeah. That's what we've been saying. We've been saying this, guys. And they just, I don't know how they need to have their come to Jesus moment, but they all had to figure it out on their own a little bit. But now the word is now, those floodgates have opened up, and it's like, oh, it's true. The Image deal is awesome. So now, if anything, we're actually turning people away. Going, we got a lot of books this month and whatever. But it's allowing us now to grab people that may have done a lot of stuff at Marvel and DC, or continue to do stuff at Marvel and DC. Especially the writers who can do multiple books. And just want to stretch their wings creatively just a little bit. So
yeah, I think in part too, you have like people like, I mean, obviously Robert Kirkman's an extreme example, but when you see something like The Walking Dead and like the sensation it became, both in comics and outside of that, you see the potential. It's like, before it seemed unattainable. It was like, oh, theoretically I could do this, but then you're like, but Robert Kirkman actually did it. And like he beat
right. No. And it's an astute point on your end that I used to run into people and they're going, yeah, well, I know, Todd, but I know how it worked for you, but those times are different now. No. And it's like, okay. Well, when we did it, the times were what they were, right? We were only working in the reality at that time. And it worked for Jim Lee and myself and a couple of the other guys. Okay, fast forward. Okay, lightning strikes again. It's called Robert Kirkman.
Right.
Okay, right? Okay, don't fuck Robert Kirkman. Oh, yeah, it never happened again. Okay, moved up to Saga then and Brian. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so the question should be, not, oh, well, it didn't work for you, it didn't work, I know they're different for you and different for Robert and different for Brian. It's like, why don't I want to be the next Robert or the next Brian?
Right.
That's the moment. And those exhausting conversations I had going all the way back to trying to start unions, of going, I just don't have the time and energy to want to have to make your life better. That's got to come from inside. Right? And if you don't want it, or if you say, well, I don't have a page rate, and if I don't have a page rate, then how am I supposed to survive, and blah, 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 blah. And you're going to here's one thing that I will tell anybody that will listen to me, especially my own children. If you are going to let 3 months, 90 days of suffering be the thing that will give you the course and the path of your life, it's a fucking fool's game. It's like, are you kidding me? You put up with pain for 90 days and you beg, borrow, and steal money from your mom, dad, wife, grandma, grandpa, neighbors, everybody to get through the 90 days, and then the book comes out, and then you get your money, and then you get to reap the benefits for 25 years, but you're going to let 60 to 90 days of you not saving money and putting it in the bank dictate your career path.
Mm-hmm.
Ouch. And for a guy like me, and I think guys like Rob, who just are wired differently, we're fearless. We don't care. It's just odd stuff. It's odd. So we've run, and to this day we have these conversations with people.
Right.
And we just go, the upside of getting 100% is that you have to put the 100% effort into it. It's on you, dude.
Yeah.
It's not on us. We don't take care of you. And oh, by the way, then if it doesn't work, then we're out the money. No. You have to have the confidence that what you're about to jump into, that you think is the cat's meow.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then I don't get it. I don't get it. So, but go ahead. So, anyway, we've had some of these silly conversations in the past. So, and continue to have them. Or what's even more frustrating for a guy like me is not only do we continue to have them, but instead they will go and make a deal then at Dark Horse or IDW or some other place that isn't Marvel or DC, but the ownership stake, somebody gets their hooks in it because somebody was willing to give them a page rate.
Right.
And so they sold their ideas, right? And so a couple of our studios, when Jim was doing it and Mark and whatever, are just going, hold on, before you make that deal with those guys, I'll give you that deal. Mm-hmm. But, with my studio, Image can't give it to you, but I'll give it to you with my studio. You want to give ownership away? Fuck, okay. But, it's weird that they go, it's just weird poking themselves in the eye going, I'm not going to take that deal because that's ridiculous. You don't give me a page rate. So instead of making $1,000 and owning everything, I'm going to make $700 and I have to give away 30% or 40% of my character. So you take that Image. Mm-hmm. Okay. Ouch. Okay. I guess that hurts us. So, it doesn't even make any rational sense. But again, I can't say that artists historically throughout history are the best business people anyway. So
I would also say that you and Rob are, being fearless is definitely a very unique characteristic in most artists, especially when it comes to commerce, because most people are thinking very short term. It seems like you guys are both short term and long term. It's like you realize that short term losses could mean long term gains, and I don't think a lot of people in comics think like that. Even the people who are running publishers, you're talking about the number one thing, and it's like that.
I think you're giving me too much credit. You're giving Rob too much credit. I don't even think that we were those guys either. I think that we just want. It's just like getting a haircut. Mm-hmm. So we go out there, we try it, it doesn't work. What's going to happen? We're going to go back to Marvel,
sure.
Or go back to DC, and they're going to say no? What are you telling? There's no downside here. So it wasn't like, oh, let's plan it out long term, whatever. It was just like, what do we got to lose? So we try it, and if it doesn't work, we go back to status quo.
Sure.
You go back if you work for Texaco and you decide you're going to start your own little snow cone business, you leave Texaco, you go, and if it doesn't work out, either go back to Texaco or go back to another petroleum company because you've got a hell of a resume, mm-hmm. right? They'll take you back, no big deal. So the fear of the unknown, is, I think, as I've gotten older, I think it's just personality traits. I think it's as simple as that, and I've explained that my definition of an entrepreneur compared to an employee is that you ask both of us to jump off a cliff. The employee tippy-toes up to the edge, looks over, goes, oh my God, how far is it? Is the wind blowing? What's going to catch me? Is that big mattress down there? Is it going to hurt when I fall on the mattress, even if I do fall on the mattress? And what if I get hurt? Are they going to take me to the hospital? And the entrepreneur goes, just jump. And for me, I back up. Why? Because I'm going to run and I'm going to jump and it's going to be glorious. The jump's going to be glorious. And my fucking arms are going to be out there and I'm going to be screaming like a banshee. And about a third of the way down, I'm going to go, Jesus, I wonder if there's anything down there to catch me. It is the last thing I worry about is failure.
Right.
If it doesn't work, where the employee, their first concern, the first consideration is if it doesn't work, because obviously then whatever is driving you is not enough of a priority. I mean, I give talks to young kids all the time, and it's like, you set what your number one goal is, and everything else in life should be fucking white noise.
Right.
White No, it's all what we call a means to an end. And it doesn't matter what anybody thinks of it or how you did it or why you did it, because if it means inching towards your goal, and I'm not here to tell you what your goal should be. It can be that you want a red Lamborghini for all I care. But if it gets you towards the Lamborghini, who cares about the rest of it? Because that's all that matters. Mm-hmm. And so you can get to these places if you just get rabid and get sort of tunnel vision. I think Rob and I were just like I think we were. There's a fine line between being, a forward thinker and being delusional, right? I mean, there are a lot of fine lines between being a genius and just being fucking insane, right? Or being tenacious and being cold-hearted. I mean, sometimes people give me credit for stuff that I wouldn't really wish upon my own children at times, because I've had to wire myself and be prepared to do things a certain way that are functional for me to do it. But I don't know that I'd encourage people to just go, no, to get through this, here's how you get through it. You just got to not give a shit.
Right.
And it's like, that's not really the best way to sort of raise human beings and stuff. So I think Rob and I and a couple of others were just there. So the guy who tippy-toes up to it is never really going to take the plunge, right? So we're looking more for, they may not get back as far as Rob and I and Eric, and we've got a running start, but we're looking for at least somebody who's willing to at least fling themselves off the cliff. And we got 60, 70 books a month in which people have made that choice. So mm-hmm. It's cool. God bless them.
So I just have a few more questions for you. I want to ask, we talked about Robert Kirkman a little bit. He became a partner in 2008. What made him, a good person to take a plunge with, making him a partner?
Well, we'll state some of the obvious. He's a good guy.
Yep.
And he loves comic books. And even at that point, you could see that he had a little bit of a business savvy to go with it, so he wasn't quite letting his emotions drive, some of his decisions that we may have been guilty of sort of early in the game. But the big part, and I don't know if it was quite as big for everybody else, but to me it was the 97% piece, was that he was a writer. Mm-hmm. And up to this point, we had never had a writer. And I'm not saying that I just wanted a token writer. There was a reason why we didn't have a writer. And there's a reason why, and I've chatted with writers before, because they're a slightly different breed, that the reason there has never been, and will never be probably, a successful writers group of comic book that starts, and they tried it with bravura and it never worked, was because we, and maybe it's just because of our limitations, we as artists can only do one book a month. Mm-hmm. So when Jim and Rob and Todd and Eric and Mark, we all decided to move our artwork to another book, we took basically all of our skills with us, and we left a vacuum everywhere else behind us. And so it was, as I said before, if you want Todd McFarlane, the guy that you love is doing Spider-Man, you now have to buy this thing called Spawn.
Right.
Spider-Man, Spawn, they both begin with SP, so we're at least it's a good start. So we're over there. But you have to come with me. You have to come with me. The writers, I kept telling them that if you want your books to succeed, you have to quit Marvel and DC, but they wouldn't heed that simple rule, because now you go to a fan and you go, hey, I have a limited budget because I have a job that pays me only X amount of money and I've got a family, whatever else. Okay, so now I go, hey, I can either now get Robert Kirkman's X-Men, Robert Kirkman's Spider-Man, Robert Kirkman's Batman, or Robert Kirkman's, he's got this new book called Walking Dead about some zombies, right? It's like, okay, I've only got $6. At best, I can only buy 2 of those because I like Robert Kirkman's stuff. So am I going to buy the unknown or am I going to buy the knowns? You're going to buy the knowns.
Right.
The knowns. Guys, stop your X-Men and Batman and Superman stuff, and they will buy your Rutabaga book because they have no choice but to buy the Rutabaga book. And Robert not only figured it out on his own, but he did it for about a year and a half with us, and he cut Marvel and DC out cold turkey.
Right.
As a writer, he was the first guy. I had been railing against this for it seemed like forever, a decade and a half. And all of a sudden, here's this bright, shining light that I go, wow, some writer is doing it on his own and is acting like an artist. Maybe I have a bias, but he's acting like an artist of going, I'm going to keep all of my skills on books that I own. Right. So you now have to buy my books, not some other corporation's book. And he did it without any complaints, whatever. And at some point, we had lost Jim Lee. By that point, had sold to DC, and Rob had been voted out as a partner at that point. So we were in a position where it'd be nice to bring on another partner, right? Mm-hmm. And I think maybe there was 4 of us, so it was like, if we get 5, then we'll, if we have any voting, it'll be an odd number. It'd be 3-2 at worst. Right. So we won't have any ties. So that was it. It was a giant reward to a man who basically just gave everything to his own skills, and because of that, we sort of rewarded him by going, "Would you like to be a partner?" He wasn't jonesing for it. Mm-hmm. He wasn't asking for it. It was like, what? And we're going, yeah, we think that the way you're acting is a perfect example to some future comic book writers, and we would love to be able to say, yes, you can reach the top of the mountain at Image, not only with your book but with ownership, if you sort of act a certain way. And it's not just artists, because we were always that artist company. Mm-hmm. And he now becomes the non-artist that shows that it's doable if you're willing to basically put in the effort. And Robert put in the effort without anybody asking him. He was self-driven, and we just acknowledged it. So for me, that was magic. That was magic.
So I also want to ask about Eric Stephenson. I mean, he's been with the company for forever, and but he took over as publisher in 2008. And since then, there's been significant gains at Image, both market share and also outside of the direct market itself. How essential or how important to the growth of Image do you feel he's been since he's taken over as publisher?
A big part, big part. Look at the when Eric was trying to do it for a while, Malibu was there. Jim Valentino took a crack at it. We had a couple other people in between. What their voice does is that you have to have a rapport with that new creative team. Mm-hmm. And if that new creative team comes in and they think that the person that you're going to be dealing with a little bit on a day-to-day basis is not compatible, then that's a big blow. And right. So, they're not phoning me, or they're not phoning Mark or Robert Kirkman, because they know we got our things and we're busy. Although if they did, we'd answer the phone. But they go, okay, who am I going to be in bed with? And Eric has done, I think, a spectacular job, and we all, recognize it in the ownership group, and we're, having, some conversations about Eric and his future. So yeah, we know he's doing good by us, and through some difficult times, and now we're even seeing some growth patterns. So again, everybody has a value, whether it doesn't have to be what it was at the beginning, which was, we were the hot artist and now we moved over. It doesn't have to be that anymore. It can maybe be, you can get to places by being, the writer guy or the marketing guy or the publisher guy or something that's just bringing value. And at some point we have to tip our hat to those people if we expect to keep them for long periods of time.
Mm-hmm. So it's been 25 years coming up in February for the official 25 years, I guess. And in any way you can really look at it, Image has fulfilled all of the promise it had when you guys first were planning on launching it. Do you feel that Image has done that in the way you expected it back then, or has its development surprised you in any ways?
I think it surprised me in that sort of how quickly after we got past some of our bumps that we were able to establish a company, and especially in the last 10 years with Eric Stephenson at the helm, of creating a corporation that an option for creative people in which can survive and almost be irrelevant of the actual original founders ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So because I remember that I went to one of the Image Expos, and one of the things that struck me is sort of interesting and a little bit of a mixed bag a bit, because we all have our egos, was that I was standing there going, wow, look, this whole room is about image.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, if I wasn't here, it would still be exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
It would be the same. I'm not saying that what we did at the beginning in 1992 as a group to start the ball rolling. It's just that the ball is rolling pretty good right now,
right,
and it doesn't need any big pushes from the original founders now.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of us, Jim Lee can go to D.C., Rob can be out, talking, get hit by a bus, Eric can, fall off a cliff or whatever, and Image will still be healthy and viable and whatever else. So for me, the only long-term goal I ever had, because I didn't know. I mean, who knew how many people were going to join or not join, and we weren't trying to go, we're going to take on Marvel and DC. There was none of that. We just want to do cool stuff. That the only real stated goal that I had for me was I want there to always be an Image Comics. And if that meant that everybody else at the beginning in 1992 eventually said, this is stupid and they all quit, I was going to do Spawn for as long as I could, and I was going to put an Image logo on it. And I go, even if it's just being insane and manic, because I'm the only one, and it just means that, Todd, you're on an island now, that I just go, no, that Image is going to survive, because ultimately the big goal of any creative person, I've always said, is to just create ideas that outlast your own personal life.
Right.
And if you can do that, I think those are successful ideas. They may not be the biggest or the fanciest, but they outlived you. And so people now go, oh, the guy who invented it's gone, but we still like his invention. And the invention is way more important than the inventor at some point. And so you go, yeah. So Image now, I think, at 25 years, we're entrenched. We're entrenched in this business called comic books. And it's hard for me to imagine that we won't be a player for, another 25 years. Why? I don't know what would change that, right? So, we may not be the same people guiding it, but there's no reason why there can't be this thing called Image that just creates this option for creative freedom to the artist for decades and decades and decades and decades. So rock and roll. So that's it. I mean, that's my greatest sense of pride is that we're still here 25 years later. That's it, right? The degree of the success is less relevant. It's that we just exist.
Mm-hmm.
First Comics doesn't, Pacific Comics doesn't, right? I mean, we could start listing a whole litany of them. But we're here, and some people were writing our obituary, a year, 2 years into it. So, all right, they missed it. They missed it a little bit. So that's cool for me. That's cool.
So the last question I have for you is, you mentioned the bumps, and I wanted to make sure to ask about that in like the mid-90s and everything. There was, Rob was voted out. Jim left, went over took Wildstorm to DC. The speculator bubble burst. There was late books, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it was an extremely exciting time, but it was also, it was a very, it was a period of disruption for comics in general and for Image. What were the biggest difficulties in figuring out the business side as you guys moved along at Image?
Scheduling. It's basically the bane of every company, Marvel and DC, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're in the publishing business, and with that comes a sense of regularity. And I think that what works in our industry is bodies of work. And so, people go, oh, remember the Frank Miller Daredevil run, or remember the John Byrne X-Men, or remember the, Jack Kirby Fantastic Four, or the Kurt Swan Superman. I mean, everybody sort of has these pockets that were like their moments of entry, or their moments of their youth where they're just going, oh my gosh, and it wasn't any better than that. And so for us, I mean, it always came down to that. It always came down to the thing that's hurting us the most isn't that we lack the skills, or we don't have the ideas, or we don't know people that we can't get to help us. It's just starting to treat Image like a real business, and not it being a frat house that we could just come and flop whenever we wanted. And I think once we sort of got scared straight more than anything else, because we saw, not only was the industry deteriorating from the bubble burst in about 92, 93, but, we were also then exacerbating it by some of our own personal actions and some of our corporate actions that we were doing. And once we sort of went, hey, if we don't do something, if we don't start acting a little more mature, probably as good a word as anything, then this may be a hard fall here.
Yeah.
And none of us wanted the hard fall. So when probably I would say the darkest time came right after Jim Lee left, because Jim Lee had so many books that were helping Image's street cred, if you will, and were helping us with our market share. And we had contracts that were tied to market share. And so that was going to put a crimp on some things that we had been taken for granted, because we were going to fall below certain thresholds. And, people were starting to go, Image doesn't know what they're doing and stuff. So, we were at a spot where we were going down, and it wasn't like we were going down and people thought, oh, those poor guys, they're going down, and it's through their own damn fault. And that was it. That was when we just go, guys, we have to stem the bleeding. And again, we're only, the industry as a whole was going through these gyrations, so it wasn't just us.
Right.
So Marvel and DC were having these conversations too. Ours just may have been a little more exacerbated. And so we just went, no, it's time. It's time for us to say, okay, how many books do we need to get? What do we got to do to get Jim's share back, given that he walked away from it? Let me go and see if I can't renegotiate some of these contracts. And we had to just go in a bit of a survival mold. But like any, story that's worth telling, the experiment basically educated us and made us better for it, right? We now know how ugly the potential fall is. And so, we won't hopefully put ourselves in a position to ever do that again, because we just go, goof. That was naivety. Now that we actually have history and data on our side, for us to go to that same spot ever again, that would just be stupidity, right? Naivety and youth, that's you can the boys, you can push that away. It's all fool me once, fool me twice, right? So now it's on us,
right?
And so that's it for me. That's where we were at, and we just slowly came along, and then Walking Dead became this marker for us, and it went and it helped. And then it started growing. A couple other books came, and we just went, okay. And everybody's found their footing, and some guys got back the number of books they were doing and stuff. So, and now we're at. And the thing is that transition went from 6 superhero comic book dudes and books to this really cool eclectic company now.
Right.
That I sort of argue that I go, hey. If you sort of have your fill of superheroes, if you want superheroes, Marvel and DC will give you tons of it. But if you sort of get your fill of that, and you're looking for just a little bit of roughage in your diet, you want something a little bit different, especially as you get older, right? For me, that was the change for me. I was just getting older. And so I just go, the same things that entertained me when I was 15 weren't entertaining me at 45.
Right.
So I just go, let's start looking at these books that are, not, X-Men knockoffs or Batman, Superman knockoffs or whatever else, and let's just start looking at just interesting books. And from that is now the new model, right? I mean, the vast minority is superhero stuff. Mm-hmm. Everything else is sort of just interesting, odd stuff, which is kind of cool. So yeah. I like it. I like that. It's hard for me to imagine that image, that just like when there used to be blockbusters, that if you like movies, that you couldn't, I don't care what your age is, what your interests are, that you couldn't walk into a blockbuster, whether it was my 5-year-old kid or my 75-year-old grandma, couldn't walk into a blockbuster and find something. Mm-hmm. You just had to go down the right aisle and find the thing that was compatible to your personal taste. Same with Image now. I think we have such a wide range of books. It's hard for me to imagine that if you are over the age of 25 and you're looking for something slightly different than, your standard superhero stuff as a steady diet, that we don't offer at least one book that somehow scratches that itch that you have right now in terms of how you want to spend some of your discretionary money. So I think we're in a good spot. It's hard because I can't say, short of the comic business collapsing, it's hard for me to go, well, what's going to collapse? What's going to hurt us, right?
Right.
If superheroes go down, don't have a lot of those. If it's like monster books, don't have a lot of those. If it's comedy books, don't have a lot of those. We're diversified. This is don't put too many eggs in one basket. This is sort of the comic book version of that right now. Mm-hmm. So we're in a good spot right now. And like I said, we've seen growth, right? This thing that hadn't been there for a long time, we're now seeing year-to-year growth.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Todd. That's all I got for you.
All right, be good.
Thanks for listening to this week's special episode of Off Panel with Todd McFarlane talking the history of Image Comics. You can find Todd on Twitter at Todd_McFarlane, on Facebook at /McFarlane Toys, on YouTube at McFarlane Company, and on Instagram at McFarlane_Toys_official. You can also find his work in Spawn at Image Comics. If you haven't read it yet, you can find the article on the history of Image that this interview led to at The Ringer. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD, follow it on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Want more from Off Panel? Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, and give the show a rating and review while you're at it. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from their album Volmilch opens and closes the show now. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.